please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Roll call.
Persing?
Here.
Kramer? Kramer?
Here.
Reichner?
Yes.
Henry?
Here.
Eister?
Yes. Is there any audience comment on any agenda items at this time? Okay, to start off, we would like to have a presentation. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Pitt, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Is here a good spot?
Yep.
It's okay. Well, thank you very much for having us here tonight. I really do appreciate it. It's nice to be here in Sunbury. I have a lot of friends from here, and I've spent some time here. My name is Dave Pidgeon. I work for Norfolk Southern's Public Relations Department. And a quick bit of trivia, I'm a fifth-generation railroader, which goes all the way back to my great-great-grandfather at the Louisville and Nashville. With me is my colleague Leon Jackson, also a friend of mine. Leon works in our Great Cross and Safety. We're here tonight to discuss a proposal that we're going to put forward. It's a safety program that we hope that you will all be partners with Norfolk Southern on. Because the truth of the matter is, I have family that works for this railroad. I also live in a railroad town. For Leon and me, railroading isn't just about business, it is also matters of life and death. Once every 3 hours in the United States, someone is hit by a train, either at a grade crossing or trespassing. So we're here tonight to talk about what we're going to do, what we would like to do about upgrading the signals that are in your downtown, and also a proposal that we have to close 3 crossings and the reasons why. Leon's here to talk about the technical aspect. I'm here to discuss the why. In Pennsylvania, just since 2012, you've had a total of 244 incidents at grade crossings, like what you have here in Sunbury. We've been fortunate in Sunbury, I know, but throughout Pennsylvania since 2012, 18 people have died and 90 people have been injured. Norfolk Southern is under a tremendous amount of pressure to reduce the number of accidents that happen at grade crossing closures. That's understandable. We want to reduce them, the public wants to reduce them, our government leaders want us to reduce them. And one of the ways that we do that is to close crossings. Now I know that many of you are going to have questions about that. What does this mean for our traffic flow? What does this mean for our town? What does this mean for my business? One of the reasons why we're here tonight is we want to know what concerns you have. Let's talk about this. Let's have a dialogue. We are part of this community. We have nearly 50 people employed in the county of Northumberland alone, and more than 4,500 people employed in Pennsylvania. They and their families, they use the same roads, they go to the same schools as all of you. So we understand if you have concerns and you have questions. We want to balance those concerns, and we want to help find solutions if you have these questions or concerns about closing crossings. You are all concerned about the safety of your town, so are we. And the 3 crossings that we're looking at closing, Church, Linden, and Woodward. Woodlawn, thank you, forgive me, Woodlawn. We all have serious concerns about the sight lines at those crossings. There are buildings there, there are homes there. And if you are traveling and you pull up to the crossing, the question is, can you see a train coming? And can this be a place where we can all work together and find solutions to concerns that council may raise, the mayor may raise, and you may raise, that we can find solutions to that can help raise the level of safety in your town. And with that, I'll turn it over to Leon for the specifics of what we're looking at.
Which would be the best wall to put this projector on?
Let's try over there, Leon. Straight across.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's good.
Or you could put it on the ceiling.
Well, it is kind of a 3D experience.
I'll wait till he's ready and then I'll turn it on.
That leg,
Is that leg on the bottom come down?
it will, yes.
So you wouldn't be able to drive across anymore, it would just be shut down.
How old is that picture?
You know, I found it on Google and it was one of the first things I saw when I started researching
That
the
flag is
city.
very nice.
I like it, it looks kind of iconic, it looks really iconic to me.
That's, well, this picture there, actually, but the shrubbery area is much bigger. So it's probably 5, 8 years ago.
I can't get a way to get this closer to the screen so it won't be so. Oh, and there it is. I apologize.
Need the mic?
And that wraps up the presentation, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna try to take this.
He's from the engineering department.
I'm getting scared.
Now I really have confidence.
If any of you are shareholders,
Last time I tried to use the projector, I didn't say.
He's your friend, right?
Thankfully, somebody said no closer.
Yeah, you don't have an extension
I
cord.
didn't know what to do
No,
either.
that's the unfortunate part. Perhaps I could do it on the wall. There you go.
Well, but we have the same situation.
Yeah, it'd be too
I
close.
think if we bring it back and just shoot it, we'll just work
Yeah,
through
okay.
the situation.
and Leon's presentation isn't too long, so we'll get through it. And if you have questions, we'll be able to answer for you.
My research thing.
I think I'll work with it. So it appears in the city.
Brad, is there any kind of cord back there, longer extension cord?
In the drawers, in the drawers to the right.
This gets struck from the official. Who's gonna want to read?
You're on tape.
I'm gonna have to give yours over, because I forgot what you said.
Got one. Is that 3 or 4 feet? Didn't get you. There you go. What's that?
So there's one
Are
right
you into that?
That should
I think
be
it's gonna be great.
right out of the.
There's the, he wrote the projector.
Unplug that, Bradley.
Please.
There you go. Thank you.
Now things are gonna happen.
Now Brad's involved.
I won't put it for overtime either.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was.
You better report it.
What's that?
You better report it.
Is it on?
All right, now give me a second.
Who said that?
There you be.
I will say that I've done presentations in front of towns of much lesser quality, so thank you very much for your patience and your humor in getting through that.
It really wants to close down some process.
I dare not move this table anymore. Okay, but what we have planned for the city of Sunbury, what we have on the railroad are track charts. And when I go through track charts, I'll look for an amazing amount of crossings within a small period. This line right here and this line right here represents railroad mileposts. So what we have here are a total of 13 grade crossings within 1 track mile. Now, we're not going to worry about Reagan Street right now, that's grade separation. What each one of these lines represents is a crossing. A line with just 2 dots is one that only has flashers, and a line that has a cross right here are lights and gates. Norfolk Southern's mission is to be the safest, most customer-focused, and successful transportation company in the world, and of course you'll see that safest is listed first. What we would like to do, I will work my way from the north to the south once this pops up. Packer Street, we would like to replace the flashers and the gates there. It's gonna, the same thing is gonna get put out there, but it's gonna be a newer version. So it's not gonna be an upgrade, we're just gonna put newer equipment out there. That's part of the proposal. This right here is the grade separated Raven Street. We have no signal plans for that crossing. The next crossing is Race Street. What we either like to do would be to put what I call island flashers. They're flashers that stand on their own. They won't be on any utility poles or telephone poles. Or we just put flashers in gates where gate arms would come down when there's a train coming. The next crossing south, Arch Street. Pretty much the same thing. We have two options here to either install island flashers or flashers with gates that come down. Moving south, we have Woodlawn here, and this is one of the crossings where we would like to have the surface removed. The next street south is a very, very widely used street, as you people may know, Market Street. We propose to install flashers and gates there. Flashers and split gates. Gates that will come down on each side since it's a pretty wide street and a pretty wide crossing. Furthermore, we have, and let me know if I forget anything, Court Street. We understand that Court Street is heavily used by trucks, and we plan to just leave that one open and install island flashers there. Island flashers or flashers and gates. After Court and Chestnut, which are pretty much the same, we would like to put flashers and gates out there. We now have Church Street. Church Street is another one of our proposed closures. Mainly I have concerns with the sight distances as cars head pretty much north or northeast. The next street down, Walnut Street, we understand that that's a widely used street, gets a lot of traffic. We would also like to put island flashers there or flashers and gates. Linden Street, we would like to remove that surface, and on Spruce Street, just like Chestnut and just like Court, we would like to install lights and gates or flashers, simply island flashers. Now keep in mind that when we are proposing a closure, we don't plan to leave it as an eyesore. We don't plan to just go out there, throw some barricades and have you guys staring at an eyesore. This pretty much sums up what we'd like to do at each crossing, and I will now talk more about the Woodlawn Avenue, the Church and Linden Street surface removal proposal. This is a picture of Church Street facing east, and as I mentioned, I had concerns going across this crossing, pulling up and seeing if a train was coming. What we propose for Church Street would possibly look something like this. In your upper left-hand corner is how the crossing looks, facing northeast. The larger picture is what we plan to put into place. We plan to extend the curb on the east side, and possibly, if the city will entertain this idea, there can be a road constructed parallel to our tracks, so the people going down Church Street can make a right and then get to Penn Street to the north.
Excuse me, I don't even know, can you, like, point, do you have a point, that pointer right there?
Yeah, I can for you real quick. So in this upper left-hand corner, I know it can be a little difficult to see, but
Yeah.
here's the building, this is the roadway coming across the track, this is the physical crossing.
And that's Walnut Street?
This
Or
is
Church?
This is Church.
Church
Okay,
Street.
mhm.
What Leon is discussing and what you see in the larger picture is an artist's rendering of what the crossing would look like when the crossing is removed. So you'll have grassy areas, curved extensions, and that's what this larger picture is meant to depict. Okay.
That's how we envision Church Street after we're done removing the crossing surface. And as you can see along this side, I had the artist kind of put in a side road, a parallel road to connect Church Street to Penn Street to the north. The next street I was looking at was Linden Street, a street where we have two houses close to the track. My main concern is if I was to remove this crossing surface, it would be a dead end and cars would, well, I guess be stuck in there. But I had the artist do a rendering, and we have a way to make that area look better after the street is removed. So in this case, just like Church Street, I had the artist take a picture, a Google picture of how the street looks now and what we plan to do after we remove the crossing surface. We plan to extend that sidewalk across to the greenhouse to the south going towards Spruce Street. But also, you'll see that there's a grassy area there where there is now a street. We think that could be a green space area or a place where you could put cars, but just keep in mind they would have to back out. But that's how we envision Linden Street without the signals there. Like I said, we don't plan to leave you with an eyesore. Now, a question you may have is, what is it going to look from the other side? I should put this on larger, maybe that would be easier to see. That would be easier to see, yes. That's what we plan to, that's the view of Linden Street looking towards our tracks, facing east. We're thinking that could be a place for a couple of cars, that people would still have access to their house and be through the back, and they could still walk to the front, and like I said, there would be a sidewalk access parallel to the roadway to the south.
Who owns that property where you're gonna have the greenery?
That's a city street, so that's city property.
So it's still owned by the city?
Yes.
And the city will be responsible for maintaining the greenery?
That's still up in the air, whether the city wants to keep it as a city green space, or if they give it to the homeowners and maybe they take care of that green space area. It's a big question mark.
I'm glad you asked that because, and we'll, discuss more once we get through this presentation, but those are the kind of topics we need to hear about.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Anyway, that's our vision for Linden Street facing west. But either way, like I said, I was gonna make this presentation short. I wanted to show you the renderings and let you know what our plans for are in the area. We are working very closely with Pennsylvania DOT. Pennsylvania DOT is actually gonna work with us to install the signal upgrades, the signal flashers, the gates, as well as assist us financially with this project because Pennsylvania safety is on the forefront as well. And with that being said, you guys have any questions for the grade crossing technical?
Leon, you didn't hit the Woodlawn Avenue.
The reason why I didn't hit Woodlawn is because we're still looking through the phases of how to basically handle that being a dead end. But we see it as a viable closure, and I could possibly get renderings for Woodlawn too if you'd like.
I just thought you might have just forgot it.
Oh no, I'm not gonna forget about Woodlawn, but I focused on two of the ones that I thought made the best rated pictures.
If I may say before we answer questions that we can, the way we view safety on the railroad, because I know there is a lot of questions and there's been a lot of focus on how safe are the railroads. The truth of the matter is that safety works best when the private railroad and the public sector work together, which is why it's important for us to have a partnership with you and with your elected leaders on this project. We're a company that has tens of thousands of grade crossings throughout our system. We operate in 22 states. And when we see statistics, like I cited earlier, injuries and fatalities related to where physical track intersects with physical road, simply put, the fewer places where that happens, the fewer chances there are of an accident. But we also know that in many ways we are symbiotic with you. When our traffic can flow and your traffic can flow, then it's a win-win for us all. And that's certainly something that we want to focus on as we continue this dialogue. And with that, if you're okay, do you want to allow them to ask some questions we can answer? Okay, then we'll open it up for any questions. You hit the line.
This is great that you're doing this, but I think there should have been a more of an open forum for the people that actually may be impacted, that actually live at some of these intersections, because they probably may not even know that this is being entertained.
Well, I'll say first of all, that this is the very beginning. This is the first moment where we've been able to come and talk with the public here and with you. We certainly understand that because Leon and I have a territory that covers 16 states. And we have these dialogues in other communities as well. So we certainly understand the concerns that folks would have who live on those blocks that may be impacted, or if they have a business there and they may have questions about that. And so you're right, it's important to hear what they have to say as well as everybody else in Sunbury.
Right.
So you're right about that, and we'll work, we'll certainly work with City Council and the Mayor and with all of you on what we can do to facilitate that dialogue. And I will say too, if you don't mind, long before Leon and I ever started working here, Conrail operated in Sunbury, and I do know that there were efforts back then. Maybe not with these three specific crossings, but this has been a dialogue that's been going on for a long time. The situation today has presented us an opportunity because we have PennDOT PennDOT is on board with this, we're here, and we're certainly hoping that you all will be too.
Now, because these crossings have been open forever, if you will, in the interim after, and if this becomes fact, is there going to be some sort of alert, I'm not even sure what the right word would be, to inform people that you can no longer cross here? You know, because just like when you change a one-way street,
Yeah,
you know, people are still going that way
sure.
because they're not accustomed to, you know, for 50 years they've been driving that way.
Absolutely. Well, we'll certainly work with City Council, your elected officials, and I can guarantee you that the Daily Item has my phone number. So, and I have theirs, so we certainly will have that dialogue. Let me add in there too, just in case you're wondering.
Sure.
We can't arbitrarily close a crossing because that road is owned by the municipality or PennDOT oversees that. We own the track, not the road. So we cannot arbitrarily close a crossing. We also cannot arbitrarily install gates at every crossing. But one of our concerns here is that the vast majority of the crossings here, and you have a lot within a short distance, which is one of the things that has brought this to our attention. You have flashers. We can't decide just to put gates in on places where the sight lines may not be ideal. That is actually under the authority of the Pennsylvania Utility Commission. So if you're wondering, why don't all these crossings have gates? Or why can't they just close it on our own? We're not allowed to. That's why.
Is there an appropriate speed for going through a city, town, borough?
As far as trains go,
Correct.
train speed is determined by a number of factors. You look at population, you look at the curvature, you also look at how often are you going to replace the ties? How often are you going to replace the rail? What kind of cargo runs on that and how frequently. So it's a very complicated formula that goes into determining train speed. Through Sunbury, the track speed is 30 miles an hour. You have roughly about a dozen trains in this area, including the locals, the through trains, what we call a road train, and also short line railroads that are not Norfolk Southern, but they work with us, they interact with us. So you have about 12 trains a day here, moving at about 30 miles an hour. And if you don't mind me saying as well, and I know that you all are very familiar with us because we come through every day, but I think it's important to note, these trains can weigh 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 tons. And even moving at 30 miles an hour, they cannot stop on a dime. They cannot stop automatically. So you can imagine the power that it takes to move something that heavy and what it can do to a car. And that honestly is why, a major reason why we're here having this dialogue today. That if we can successfully implement this safety program and do it in a way that has the support of City Council, the mayor, and you all, then I think that's a win for your downtown, for your town, and for us as well.
Is there any cost to the city?
No projected costs to the city. The signal upgrade project, as well as the crossing removals, the barricading of the crossing, are going to be borne upon either PennDOT or Norfolk Southern. I want to further answer your question about the barricading. When we go out there and barricade, there will be a period of time where there are going to be bright signs. I call them 18-inch diamonds, those red diamonds, for people that are used to driving in the area, letting them know that that way is inaccessible anymore. We're going to wait some time before we make those, you know, the cosmetic stuff, the renderings. We'd hate for someone to go through there on a dark night, maybe someone that came back from college, and, you know, that's what we look for.
And to further answer your question.
Green space and the cost for the lateral roads on Church Street, you guys assuming that cost too?
How does that work, man?
We're going to treat that on a case-by-case basis. I think that the cost of that green space would probably be minimal. If we were to put anything out there that NS pays for, we're not expected to maintain it after it gets put out there if it is a green space. That was just a rendering, that's a random idea. We'll let the city decide what to do with that area. Or
What about that road that you were talking about, Church Street going lateral to the railroad going over to Penn Street then? Is that going to be something you guys going to put into?
That's part of the discussion we need to have. We don't own roads that the public uses. We of course have roads along our track, along our right of way, but being that we are a private corporation, We don't have those, but that's part of the discussion that we need to have, and why I want to emphasize this is just the beginning. But a question like that is something that we would have to work out. How can we make that happen? And is there a way that we can find that way? Because we're interested in that. We take our, you hear me say this a lot, I know, we take our role as a corporate citizen seriously. But I am very truthful when I say that the 50 people working here in this county alone, and them and their families, they work and shop in Sunbury too. So we know that if we close a crossing and create a dead end, we don't want to close a crossing that creates a safety hazard. If we close a crossing, we want it to be safe. Safety is our #1 priority. We want our train crews and our track crews and our signal maintainers and all of you to get home safely tonight. Now, if you don't mind, to further answer your question, part of this dialogue is that there is funding available from the state and from Norfolk Southern. The amounts I can't necessarily get into, and I hope you can respect that privacy. Because again, we're at the very beginning. But this isn't necessarily a one-way street for us when we come and say, let's close a crossing. Because we also recognize that cities like Sunbury, they also face tremendous challenges just from their general fund. Police services, training, insurance, health insurance, cleaning the streets on a bad winter. We all know what last winter was like. And heck, even February's been rough for us down in Lancaster. I don't know how it's been for you up here. The Arctic Circle seemed to center right around the garden spot. So we can have those discussions as well. Norfolk Southern's contribution can go directly into the Sunbury General Fund. PennDOT's has specific parameters related to that. So like I said, this is not necessarily a one-way street for Norfolk Southern where we get the full benefit. And being somebody who has grown up in Lancaster and has worked with municipal governments and has seen the revitalization of boroughs and cities across our Commonwealth, we also look at the signal upgrades we're going to be making as hopefully a contributor to the aesthetics here in downtown. Right now they are hanging off of light poles in many cases. So not only would there be a safety upgrade, but hopefully there would also be a visual upgrade. Now I will admit that the safety aspect of this is the top priority, but if there can be an additional benefit that way, I hope that's a positive.
I have a question.
He had his hand raised and then I'll correct you.
Doing this work, closing the crossings and adding the gates, is that going to allow Norfolk Southern to drive trains faster through Sunbury?
Right now, we have no proposal to move any quicker.
Would it allow you to, though, whether you have plans or not? That's what I'm.
It's incredibly difficult for me to say yes or no, only because, again, that formula goes into effect and it gets approved by the FRA, so it's a fair question. But I would say, given the sheer number of crossings that you will still have within that 1 mile radius, that's still a serious number of crossings that we are cognizant of and that would go into that formula.
Do you have any plans of lowering the speed to improve safety at all? Or?
Well, at 30 miles an hour, we believe we are moving safely. And I can
Okay.
show you the statistics that show that just since 1980, accident rates in the railroad have gone down 80%. And in 2014, statistically speaking, was the safest year in the history of the railroads. I don't have the 2015 numbers yet. I believe they're still being compiled by the FRA. But I think you'll find that safety is at its best right now.
Okay.
Okay, one of my concerns, and maybe shouldn't be concerned, but Sunbury is a very old town. Properties are very old. When there's a fire, it's of the essence that the fire department's able to get there. We close 3 streets down. What's that going to do to our fire departments?
Which is a great question. And we work with 911 and emergency planners throughout our system. And here would be no different. That if we did close a crossing to work on, okay, how does your emergency plan become impacted? How can this work? Answering any questions or any concerns that we have. The concern that you've raised is something that we discuss anytime a grade crossing closure comes up. One of the factors that we look at when we look at a possible grade crossing is where's the nearest one? How will this impact emergency response? A lot of our employees are volunteer firefighters or ambulance drivers. We are very closely tied to the first responder community. This is one of those areas where I say safety on the railroad is best when we're all working together, the private company and also the first responder community. So we're cognizant of that, and if there's a concern, you know, we'll certainly do our best to answer that and see what we can do about finding a solution.
See, one of the things I think about, and maybe I'm wrong in saying this, we have one crossing in the city of Sunbury, that if you have a train that's derailed or something, there's one exit to the other side of town, just one. That's
The
Reagan
bridge,
Street.
the grade crossing separation you're talking about?
Reagan Street, that's Reagan Street. So if you take 3 out, that does take 3 out, but it still only lets one to get through if there's really an emergency.
Yeah, that's a topic that comes up a lot. We do believe that the safest kind of crossing is where the road goes over the track or the track goes over the road, because you literally separate the two from each other.
Unless it rains like that, now it's closed.
And then there's that. Those are very expensive though, as I'm sure you can all imagine. There's also a question of where can they be done and be done in a way that doesn't take away from your downtown. Has anybody been to Lebanon recently? You have. Have you seen the bridges over top? You lived on that block. Now you have a bridge in your face. So these are very complicated questions, and they require some difficult solutions. But I will say that if it's possible that what we call a grade crossing separation, or the road goes over the track on a bridge, if that can be engineered, then we help municipal governments find the funding it takes, because that would put tremendous pressure on their accounts. But there is funding available out there, and we do what we can to help to support and find those sources.
When the mayor and myself met, we met with David Mason and Stephen Klinger from
Mhm.
the North, and somebody from PennDOT. He never gave me his card. Is this all 3 crossing deals are none yet?
I'm sorry, what?
All three crossings have to be closed, or we don't do it?
That can be part of our discussion as we continue to go forward. We would like to see 3. Obviously, that is what our goal is. But that's certainly something that we can discuss.
And then, I just asked Dave, I understand the big carrot that you guys dangle in front of us to get us enticed in, this is no longer available.
I'm not aware of
I
what,
think it was like 25,000 an intersection, plus what PennDOT was gonna kick in. We were looking at close to $100,000. That's no longer available, is what you're telling us?
that is not what I said. Now, please understand, Councilman, that I am not authorized to negotiate, particularly in this setting.
That guy was.
But was it here?
Huh? I didn't hear what you said.
This
Was
was
it
like
here?
this was like 2 years ago. We met.
Right.
Right, he was here.
And I know them both. No, what we're saying is there remains an incentive. It's something that I am not authorized to discuss here publicly right now, anyway. But that can be part of our ongoing dialogue. Because this is what I was saying, that it is not necessarily a one-way street, that this is a two-way, and because we also understand, and I personally understand, the pressures that